Welcome to Happy Hour. In these recent episodes, we've been talking about different spirits and different brands of those spirits and their different characteristics and why we would use some brands over others for certain types of drinks. We've done whiskeys over the past two episodes, and I broke that down into bourbon or American South, whiskeys from the American South, and then also all the other types of, you got rye, which is related to that, but then I get into Scotch a little bit, but not too much. But we're going to move over to one of my most favorite spirits, which is gin. So, like every other spirit, you have a difference in quality depending, and it's not necessarily the most expensive is the best. Sure, sometimes this is true, but you can, in between top shelf and bottom shelf, this call area, there can be some really, really delicious spirits that are like totally functional, either on their own or in the context of a drink. Now, generally speaking, I find it to be a little wasteful, superfluous, I don't know, to use too nice or complex of a spirit in a mixed drink situation, right? So you wouldn't necessarily want to take the most toppest shelf gin and make gin sour out of it. I mean, you of course could, and there's nothing wrong with doing it. It's like I said in an earlier episode, it's kind of like putting ketchup on a steak. Hamburger is fine for that. But then once you're in these middle areas, or even top shelf, we'll say all, gins have different qualities. Gin is closest, I guess, to vodka in that it's a clear spirit, but it's very far away from vodka, as vodka is a very neutral spirit. It's the point of vodka. It's not really supposed to taste like much at all. It's almost like a pure grain alcohol. The more distillation it goes through, the more pure it tastes. Gin is distilled with botanicals, juniper berries. So a gin that is distilled with, licorice might have more sweetness to it, or an anise, So you're putting in all this plant, that's all this vegetal matter in with the mash, and then distilling that. And if you were to distill it down to a certain point, it would taste like vodka, I guess, if you really, really got rid of all the extra flavors, but you're also trying not to do that. That said, sometimes you don't want too much flavor. Let me start with an example. Tanqueray, arguably, obviously, the most famous brand of gin, I would say. That's fair to say. Very piney tasting, very juniper forward. This performs very well in a gin and tonic with a lime. It's just because it's just a very, very herbaceous, piney tasting cocktail. And some even like this in a martini. I personally like something a little more dry and a little less floral or piney, so I would go with Beefeater. Now, Beefeater for me is kind of like, this is the workhorse of the gin department. There's almost nothing that you can put Beefeater in wherein it's not appropriate, unless you're looking for something to be more in one direction or the other. Beefeater is a solid, very good tasting gin. It's great in a gin and tonic. It's great in a martini with a little bit of vermouth. It can hang with everybody, and it's dry, and it stays out of the way for the most part, except for bringing in a very dry, London dry gin flavor, but not overly piney. I don't want to say that Tanqueray is overly piney, but it is decidedly that. So if you wanted something where gin is just kind of playing a strong and crisp backbone to your drink, I would use something like Beefeater. Now, if you wanted to kick it up a notch in the quality department, another one of my favorites, and I've talked about this a lot on the show, is Plymouth gin. Plymouth is, if I'm treating myself to a very nice martini, it's generally Plymouth. So, for what that's worth. Another gin that I like that has a different flavor profile entirely, and I don't have a bottle to my right, but it's locally made, it's Bimini gin. has like a little bit of a sweeter note to it. It is tremendous in a tonic. It's tremendous in a tonic with a little dash of bitters. That's actually a drink that I learned from them, I believe, by way of my wife, because she had a Bimini gin and tonic at their distillery, and what a drink that is. Again, not as dry as Plymouth, but a very, very high quality gin. In fact, I find that of all the spirits that we make here in the Northeast, we are best, in my opinion, at gin. And maybe that's because we're in New England. I don't know. But it seems to be the spirit that our local distillers have the best handle on with the profiles and the overall flavors. And also just like the originality of each of the gins is pretty impressive. They all seem to have like a bit of a different quality to it and their own flavor profile, which is all very interesting. And then also, very briefly before we wrap this one up, Hendrick's gin. I'm sure you're all familiar with Hendrick's. The bottle that you can never tell if it's full or empty. I don't know. This might be completely full or one sip left in it. I can't tell. Distilled with cucumber. It's a cucumber gin. So this in a martini garnished with a cucumber. It is neither sweet nor spicy, but rather just kind of delicate and elegant, I would say. Hendrick's in a tonic is great. On its own is great. I mean, you don't see generally a lot of people like just sipping gin on the rocks, although I guess now that I say it out loud, it's like, what is really the difference between just drinking gin on the rocks and a very dry martini? The answer is none. But I also like a little bit of vermouth in the martini. But this is something that you wouldn't want to pair this with something. It would be useless to use this like in a sour or something that had kind of the mixers that had robust flavors, because it would just kind of get trampled on, because this is very light and delicious and should just kind of be enjoyed, in my opinion, on its own. And that's all I have to say about gin, y'all. This has been Happy Hour, brought to you by Maine Spirits. You can learn more about this and many other cocktails at mainspirits.com. You can download their app for your smartphone. Smart move. Why? What to buy? Where to buy it? What to do with it once you get it. You can follow them on Instagram at Maine_spirits. And as always, we implore you to drink deliciously and responsibly.